All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Anthony Cates, and this is the Fantasy Off Season at Fantasy MLB Today, a SportsEthos presentation. We have a special guest with us today, Jeff Clowers, one of our own writers here at SportsEthos, one of my Dynasty homeboys, is here to talk with me about some prospects. What we're going to talk about are some prospects we think will be on the AK Dynasty 300 top 100 prospects list by the end of the season. Now, if you don't know Jeff, I've known Jeff for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years. We played some Dynasty Leagues together. I convinced him to come write at Sports Ethos last year. So this is his second year of Sports Ethos. He's a wonderful writer. If you looked at our draft guide, he's been doing almost all Dynasty stuff, but this is his specialty, man. This guy's a winner. He's going to help you win your leagues. But he does that for your redraft players. He's got the redraft leagues, rookies and prospects that matter. For Dynasty and Keeper leagues, he has your draft strategy for Dynasty and Keeper leagues. And then he went ahead and got out of his comfort zone, if you will, and he previewed the National League West division. Go ahead and say hi, Jeff.
Howdy, everybody. Howdy, Anthony.
That's Jeff. Hey, Jeff. Before we dive into everything, you heard me talk about the draft guide. Let's promote a little bit, all right? Paul Williamson has his Paul Williamson 300, which are the top 300 redraft rankings. That's every position ranked, prospects, starters, relievers, corner infielders, run infielders, outfielders, you name it. We have my AK Dynasty 300, which is the Dynasty top 300, top 100 prospects, 30 players at every position, plus 60 outfielders and 60 pitchers. We've got mock draft reviews coming out. We're going to be doing some NFBC drafts coming up here soon. Jeff, any drafts? You going to be on the NFBC this year or what?
I'm sure hoping it's going to be fun.
Well, see, like we're gonna get Jeff. We'll get Jeff to review one of those. He's not much of a redraft guy, so that could be kind of fun. We have a couple of tools coming out. Hopefully this week we're gonna have our ADP tool, which is really tracking the live ADPs on the different websites for you, and the draft tracker tool that track your draft, letting you know what positions and what statistics to draft to help you win your league. And kind of the big news at the end of the week on Friday, if you guys missed it, Rick Kamla, just one of the greatest fantasy basketball players, has decided to join us on the baseball side for a weekly article for the next 4 or 5 weeks. He started out last week with how to win your league by ignoring starting pitching for the first 10 rounds. And let me tell you, I got to edit that article, and it's freaking wonderful. Kamla is an expert fantasy baseball player, okay? He won 37 out of 91 leagues. And if I remember correctly, he placed, so that's top 3 in 74% of those leagues, give or take something like that. And we have more coming this week. We have tons more coming out every single day, from the podcast to articles. So to stay on top of that, if you want to follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at AKFantasyBB, like you see on the screen up there. And you can follow Sports Ethos on Twitter at EthosFantasyBB and on Blue Sky at EthosFantasyMLB. And before we dive into these prospects, since Jeff is our guest here, we're going to give him the great opportunity to read us the Bet Online ad read. Jeff, the floor is yours.
What an honor. Thank you for the rookie hazing. Of course, Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Oh, man, round of applause, everybody, for Jeff. First time and he nailed it. Sounded wonderful. You might be coming for my job, guys. You might be the official ad read.
I'm not going to hold the organization free.
Well, like I said at the top, Jeff here, Vontae Dynasty player. He's the light Dynasty League I made with him. He won back-to-back titles. He's in it for the last 3 years. He's been top 4 in the league. But what we want to talk about today we've got a handful, 5 prospects each, that we expect to make the top 100 prospects on the AK Dynasty 300 by the end of this season. As the guest, though, I am going to turn it over to Jeff, and we're going to talk about the first person on his list.
I appreciate that. But before we get started, I do want to just give you some credit, obviously, for the hard work you put into those big rankings packages there. I know a lot of blood, sweat, tears, as you mentioned in the opener there, and it's really impressive what you've been able to put together on that. And I obviously have talked fantasy rankings with you lots, and seeing some of those, I remember thinking off the hop, I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that ranking at all, but thinking about it a little bit more, I was like, you know what? I think that actually fits a lot better than I thought. So even your controversial takes on those rankings were pretty on point. So props for you for that one. That said, of course, we are here today to talk about the players that we think will eventually jump on that you didn't include. And my first guy there is going to be Alex Freeland, the shortstop middle infielder for the Dodgers. He's been on quite a few prospect lists, top 100 lists this preseason. It's not a complete huge leap to think that he might make it on to yours coming up here. I understandably, he's not necessarily a high ceiling player necessarily. He's kind of more just a solid dude, well-rounded package kind of thing. No glaring holes in his swing. He's got a little bit of speed. He's also quite close to Major League ready. Having played in AAA there, comes with a good organization in the Dodgers. And, obviously playing time is a huge aspect of fantasy sports here. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not getting those at-bats, then you're not doing much for us. And, surprisingly, considering how much they spent this offseason, there is actually a little bit of a hole at second base here for the Dodgers. Ha-Seong Kim does not actually hit the ground running all that well. Obviously, they spent a lot of money on him, but they're not unwilling to eat that kind of money for that kind of team there. Let's take it a step back a little bit as far as what we know more about Freeland. There's a famous kind of anecdote, I guess, that seems to get brought up in every single breakdown of his profile there, and that's that he underwent a series of surgeries on his foot as an infant for club foot. So he's coming off of a little bit of a hindrance in there, and something that you could reasonably point to as something that would slow down his development a little bit. In addition, he did also break his hamate bone pre-draft, so that naturally knocked his stock down a little bit as well. But that said, he's a switch hitter. He's better as a lefty, and that hitting tool that I mentioned that he's well-rounded in is kind of exemplified, I think, by his walk rates and K rates across 2024. So he had a 14.8% walk rate, obviously very strong, and just a 21.6% K rate. So that was across 2024, so 39 games at AAA there as a 22-year-old, so pretty young to the level as well. And then could, again, mentioned a little bit of speed there. He's more of the kind of intelligent base runner as opposed to just a true burner. But I'm thinking he could be a 15-15 guy with some strong OBPs if you're playing in those formats, and probably a pretty decent average anyway, even if you don't. So between that and lots of Cammy stats in the Dodgers lineup, I think this could be, whether he's a prospect, a high on prospect list, or just a high fantasy ranking as a whole, I think he's somebody worth watching here.
So I agree with just about everything you've said about Freeland. It is funny that Ha-Seong Kim is someone that could kind of keep him in AAA for a little while this year. Because see, his game reminds me a lot of Ha-Seong Kim, who was the second base shortstop in San Diego, right? Had to make sure I got those names right, so I realized how close together they are. Oh, but also same division. Yeah, same division. But it's also, I think, what will affect him is how deep the Dodgers kind of keep their multi-positional eligibility players, right? Because they've got, I think, 6 players that can play shortstop and second base on the roster, but really, I'd say like a really good shortstop, it's basically Mookie Betts and Miguel Rojas. And I think everything on his bat over Rojas's at this Rojas' stage of his career. And I do, the 15-15, I can easily see that. As you said, the counting stats, anyone in the Dodgers lineup, if they can get on base and hit like 260, are gonna be just fine. Like you're gonna succeed up and down that lineup. And I remember I messaged you this, that he was on my short list for the top 100 to begin the season. He is on some other top 100 lists. I just it's like you said, he's more of a floor guy than a ceiling guy. And on the back end of my top 100, I like to target ceiling guys. I want to get those guys that if they hit are going to be top 10 guys, right? They're going to be some dudes you're talking about. But yeah, Freeland's a great choice. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in May. Just
I think it's highly possible. Yeah, that's factoring quite a bit into my consideration there. That proximity, because I agree. I'm certainly a home run hitter type as well when it comes to lottery ticket prospects. You and I agree on that quite a bit. But I think we often underrate just the pure value of that sometimes as well.
exactly, yeah. Just a safety, a safe floor guy can kind of be at the major league level better than the lottery pick.
Yeah.
I would like to have in fantasy. All right, well, then I'm going to kick off with one of my favorite guys, a guy who's been off and on my fantasy rosters because of TJ surgery. That's J.R. Ritchie. He's a starter in the Atlanta Braves organization. 2022 draftee, got a handful of starts in 2023, then TJ surgery kept them out for the rest of 2023, most of 2024. Return last year, though, looked pretty good. The control was better post TJ than it was pre TJ. But something that you and I both noted is that, the velocity wasn't back to the level it was pre-TJ surgery. Before TJ, he was up to 98, settled in around 96, 97. Now he's kind of in the 92 to 93 range. Can get you 94, 95. But I'm hoping, just like the Braves probably are, that, it was 50 innings. He was working his way back. Let's see what he does with a full year back pitching it. Because here's the thing, he's got 2+ pitches already. Like, if you can bank 2+ pitches and come up with a third average pitch, you're a number 3 or number 4 starter in the big leagues. Maybe a number 2 if you've got like a Spencer Strider style, fastball slider combination. And on top of all the kind of good news we already have is that I trust in the Braves pitching development. So much so that we're going to talk about 2 Brave starters. I think they have one of the best minor league systems for developing arms. I know we've talked about it all the time, and they've had a lot of misses. But the fact that we've talked about so many of their arms tells us so much about their development, I think. And if he comes out and he looks just like the guy he was last year, but he does that for 80, 90, 100 innings, there's no reason he's not on the top 100, because that's almost 10 Ks per 9, 2 walks per 9. The home runs, let's see what's going to happen there. I think maybe it was just small sample size inflating, but if we are still up in that 1.5 or higher, then we're going to start looking at, okay, is it command over control here? And is he throwing too much in the zone? What do you think?
For sure. Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. I was just going to say, as far as the separation of the fastball and his changeup there, I think really just looking at his velocity this past year, like you mentioned, because of the TJ coming back from TJ surgery there. He returned in June after missing like a chunk of 2023 and 2024. I think obviously we've seen how, pitch sequencing really works well when you have lots of separation of the miles per hour on the pitches. And he was able to get 8 miles per hour separation between his fastball and his changeup previously. But obviously that velocity change shrinks that band quite a bit, gives him less room to work with, which I think led to those home run trebles that you were referencing there a little bit. So I think he's certainly an interesting pitcher. I think there's definitely a framework here that's worth watching. And as you mentioned as well, I fully agree. It's a great organization to come up with. As we saw last year, Schwellenbach, like those guys come out of nowhere for these guys. It's crazy what's happening nowadays. And obviously they had lots of success on the hitting side of things too. But yeah, I think I like the other Braves pitcher that we're going to highlight a little bit later on from your list a little bit better. But I do agree he's an intriguing arm there, worth watching.
One thing I did want to bring up with him is with the changeup and the fastball. Even though, like you said, there's about an 8 mile per hour difference. One, the good control, right? Pitch tunneling does really well there. He still had almost a 22% swinging strike rate just on the changeup last year. So, like, if he can, I don't think he'll maintain that. Like, that's like such a crazy high level for a full season that like we'd be talking about him having the best changeup in all of baseball at that point. But even if that one can just stay in the high teens, and he does get 3 or 4 more miles of separation, right? If we just get that fastball back up to like 95 on average, that is going to be such a deadly combo that if he develop this like slider or the splitter he's working on, if either one of those comes in average, like we're going to be fighting over that guy in fantasy drafts and leagues from here on out.
Yeah.
Well, let's go with your next guy. I see we have Well-Being Francisca.
We sure do, yeah. So obviously another middle infielder here, a little bit of a different profile. Francisca really profiles more as your kind of wiry, spark plug middle infielder. You see these guys that are kind of a dime a dozen in the Guardian system at this point. You can consider him maybe like, if you're really dreaming, a spiritual successor to Lindor. If you're getting really hype, obviously pump the brakes a little on that, but I know the Guardians fans are certainly looking for any bit of hope that they can find right now. So if you want to dream, I think Francisca's as good an infielder as you can hope on for the time being here. But as far as his profile, again, he's obviously a great hitter. More than anything, that's what he's known for. Kind of being a freak with bat control skills, honestly. But that said, he did strike out a little bit more than we expected from him. Once he did make the jump to affiliate ball, his strikeout rate jumped from 12.4% in the complex league all the way up to 20.5% once he hit single A there. But in turn, we did get a little bit more power payoff for that. So, it's a balancing act, obviously. A lot of players try that, try to find what balance works best for them until something really sticks. So it's worth watching what happens with that in 2025 and whether he's still a hit over power middle infielder or if that ends up flipping. But honestly, he's kind of underrated as far as prospect lists go. I don't see him on too many at this point, but he actually he compares relatively favorably to Jesus Nade, who he put out really good TSL stats. So I'll compare them 2024 Mate and then 2023 Francisca. So as far as their whiff percentage, Mate with 10%, Francisca 16. So a little bit worse there, but still well within the range of quality contact there. He was chasing just 19% of the time compared to Mate's 15. So again, same band right there. So that shows their bat control skills and their ability to get to pitches in the zone. And then as far as power goes, this is where he lags a little bit behind, so the comparison pulled off a bit. But just as a point of reference here, so his 90% 90th percentile EV output was 100.5 miles per hour compared to Mate's 104.2. So 4 miles per hour difference there. You're lacking the big stick in the same way, but it's not bad. It's probably 50 grade power at least there. And then he maxed out at 105.3 miles per hour. So again, he's a little bit smaller guy, but considering he's not on very many lists versus topping lots of lists for Mate, we're getting really far. We're getting deep into it, but these underlying stats are still suggesting that there's something interesting here worth watching with him. That's just with the stick. As far as his wheels, he's still got the speed to steal probably 20 bags in the bigs. Should stay in the middle infield. From what I've heard, he's generally kind of a high effort defensive player. He doesn't look, super smooth out there with his motions and everything at this point. So the suggestion is that he'll probably end up being a second baseman instead. But yeah, he's worth watching. And if the power is for real and he's able to kind of get back to the excellent bat control skills that he showed to begin with, then you have a really well-rounded profile up the middle infield, and those types of prospects fly up lists constantly. So that's my expectation there.
Okay, well, let's see here. I am a Francisca guy. I did think, though, you would have got with a different Guardians middle infielder, but I know that on Helge now's kind of getting all the goal right now, right? He's still everyone's kind of hyping up. But I was thinking there's something that I really liked with Francisca was even though when he made the jump from the complex to low A ball, the strikeout percentage jumped. I like that the walk rate didn't drop that much. 1.8%, he's facing guys up at 22, 23 years old. It's his first real taste of stateside ball. A very small sample size, 132 better appearances. Yeah, that's nothing. And something that I love to look for in young hitters is a great line drive rate. If they're not going to be they're not going to be power hitters, Give me a great line drive rate. Give me a bunch of doubles, right? Let's go ahead and let's skip right past first base. Put yourselves in scoring position. He had a 23% line drive rate at low A, which is anything above 20, and I'm singing your praises, which is really great. Now, if he's ever going to get to that power, that's, it's got to elevate the ball. 55% ground ball rate's not what you want to hear from somebody who might have 25 homer power at his peak if we're elevating the ball, and he's getting, he puts on a little bit of weight. He's kind of a small guy, 5'8", but Altuve's 5'9", has hit 30. So not out of the question. But yeah, I like him. I think he's like a great at getting on base. He's almost like a traditional leadoff guy without the elite speed, right? Like he's definitely got plus speed.
If we're comparing against Guardians middle infielder types, he's probably more of a souped up Juan Brigo than anything. If you're really comparing them,
yeah. I mean, I can see, if you squint, I see Francisco Lindor, but that's because he's standing in front of Wellman Francisco. But yeah, I mean, it's a great choice. That guy, he comes out hitting like he already has, right? We know he's a 300 hitter. And yeah, these are very high BABIPs, but when you have the good solid hit tool and a lot of speed, those guys always have a really high BABIP, right? They're gonna
that line drive rate too. High line drive rates tend to lead to
those two. You combine that, we're getting on base, and if he maintains that walk rate, we keep that up there at 11-12%. The strikeout rate's going to sort itself out, right? His swinging strike rate wasn't terrible, 11.6. It's whatever. That's minimal. It's going to come down to his swing decisions. Which he's got some solid ones. He's making an 81%, 84.5% contact, and the complex small sample at low A 75.4. Do we want that higher? Absolutely. 75 we'll take it though. That's not a terrible straight swing contact rate there. All right, we'll top into my second guy. This one, okay, look, this is a bit contentious. I know this is a guy who's definitely ceiling over floor. Okay, I'm going to get ahead of this right now because I'll tell you guys, Jeff's a bit of a hater, all right? He rained a little bit on my parade here, and I'm sure maybe this has a little bit of the Yankee shine behind it, plus his dad was a pro. We're talking about George Lombard Jr. here, shortstop for the Yankees. If you haven't heard about him, listen, you're going to start hearing the hype. Okay, the Yankees are already kind of hyping him up. You should have heard a little bit last year. He was invited to early spring training, and he hit the home run. They had all the prospects there, and everyone was going nuts over it. But this is a guy who's got above average speed, above average power, above average defense. The problem is the hit tool may only be average. And if it's only going to be average, then he's got to have a lot of contact, a lot of hard contact, which we don't know if he's going to have yet. But the good thing is he walks a lot, which helps him to get on base more. Like Francisco, though, got to elevate that ball, right? He's got to elevate it. In his pro career, his ground ball rate is 44%, which is why he has not hit a lot of home runs. But on the flip side, 22.4% career line drive rate. So he hit 25 doubles last year. He hit 39. He stole 39 bases last year, but struggled more in high A than low A. He was stole A bases was kind of 4 times. I don't know if that was poor decision making or just the better catchers, right? As you move up, the catcher's going to get better. We'll see what happens. So the focus this year, and I know the Yankees hitting development has been getting better. They're definitely trying to produce more homegrown batters than they did in the past, right? This isn't the Yankees of the past where they're spending $80 million a position. We have Anthony Volpe, who came from the system, Austin Wells, some of these other guys they're working on. So what I'm hoping is he makes more contact. We're working on the contact, and he elevates the ball. If he does both of those things right there, he already makes enough hard contacts that he's going to get on base, steal bases, hit home runs, and the name won't matter. Jeff, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, you alluded to it off the hop, that I'm a little bit more of a cold water type with Lombard here. Admittedly, though, I will say that in my research, once you mentioned him as one of your guys here, a lot of people are believers, so you're certainly not alone on an island of that. I'm more the one taking the hot take out for a spin here, but I honestly, in scouting it and seeing just the stat line again, obviously I don't get personal views of this guy. We're not that type of scouting outfit at this point, but everything I saw pointed to more of a high floored, lowish ceiling type. I don't want to cap him too early in his career here, but he has some speed. But I think he's more of a 55 runner than like a 60 burner. In particular, the stat that I point to there is that he was caught stealing on 17% of his attempts, which is pretty high. That's not a great break-even rate. And if you're doing that in the majors, you're probably, I don't know what the current math is with the new bags and everything, but that's not going to get you the green light every single time. So that's a little bit of a concern there. For me as well, the strikeout rate was something that I noticed. He did run a 24% strikeout rate at single A, which is quite elevated for what's not a power hitting corner infielder type. But he did at least drop that down to 19.8% once he got promoted. So he's making improvements there. That's positive. But again, he's not a power hitter type. He ran a 0.070 ISO, so below 100 ISO, with 0 home runs at high A. He was graded by BA with a 50 grade power. Obviously that's future projection, but right now I think he's more of like a 45 type. And I do think that name value is carrying just a touch of recognition to it. He's certainly somebody that you can see making it onto the back end of the top 100 list coming up here, but I don't think he's going to be somebody that you see in the top 60 or so. He's probably going to float in that 85 to 100 range, and I think that's reasonable. But I don't know. I think for players that you want to make the case of, if they made more contact and lifted the ball, they'd be excellent. I think you could say that for half of the minor leagues, and their profile would change significantly. So I'm less of a believer, but admittedly, I also don't like the Yankees either. So maybe I'm the one being colored here a little bit.
No, it's understandable. It definitely is understandable. Like I said, this is just somebody like a low floor. He's got to hit his ceiling, I think, to truly, I think 90. Like if he doesn't hit his 90th percentile, he is a bench guy. I'll admit that. But the Yankees also let Anthony Volpe play every single day and bat 215. So, is there a world where he's like a 15 and 25 guy? I think so. Right? He doesn't even turn 20 until June. He's got to get 2 full professional seasons under his belt, which helps, right? He got 60 plate appearances his draft year. And then we got 497 last year. That's a lot, right? So I think, he'll probably start the year back out in high A. And the thing I'll be watching, 1 is the contact rate, and 2 is he's still walking a bunch, right? I want some more patience at high A. Pitchers start to attack the zone a little bit more. So I started to take the walk rates more serious once you hit the high A and above. But yeah, I see the flaws there. I just, so the more I read, the more I look at it, you hear about the guy. He's 6'2", 190. But there's still a little bit of room. Still a little room to put on some muscle. And he's just got to lift the ball. His swing is like perfect for elevating the ball. Right.
And if they get the Yankee Stadium to call home too, it won't hurt much.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he'll get the chance to run it out there, like you said with Volpe. Like the team will give him the opportunity. That's probably one where the actual name value does add a little bit of credence and rope to him. His ability to get that, like the team will give him just a little extra leeway, I would imagine. But you said, so just real quick, 90th percentile outcome. You said 15.5. Is that what you said?
I think he get to 15.25.
Yeah. But what do you think he hits? Sure. What do you think he hits in that scenario?
If we're just being serious, he's like a 10-20 guy, but he's gonna get on base a lot. Because I do think he'll walk a lot. I don't. The 22% the strikeout rate was a bit higher, 24% in A ball. Like you said, he dropped it under 20 at low A. If he keeps it under 20, right? Most guys jump a couple of percentage points when they get to the major leagues from like their AAA rate. If he's striking out less than a quarter of the time, walking 12%, that's a 10, 20. That's a guy. I'm trying to think of like who I could really compare that to. It's in the big leagues right now. That's like Andres Jimenez with less speed, right? And he just got traded for like the quote unquote package from the Blue Jays had to trade for him for some reason, right? So that's a big league player right there. And Andres Jimenez was a back end top 100 guy, right? We're not saying these guys are going to be top 5. I'm not saying he's the future number 1 prospect, right? He's 97th. Let's be That's my top 100. Let's see what happens.
But totally fair. Considering the dearth of second baseman in the major league level right now, too, there's a good chance that he might be totally relevant in that way, no matter what.
Exactly. All right, let's go. You have your third guy. We're back to some starting pitching.
Yeah, let's see. So we have my guy Trevor Harrison, who we both went with different Rays starters, which is interesting. Obviously, we like their system quite a bit. You know, the Rays are well known for tinkering with players and trying to find the ways to maximize their output there. So you know they might break a little more often, sort of like the Dodgers do. But you know it's a worthwhile development pipeline to bet on. So Trevor Harrison, again, he was a 5th round draft pick out of high school. Kind of a more of a power pitcher type. I would, you know, again, pumping the brakes a little here, but in the McClanahan mold. Unlike your guy, who we'll leave nameless for now, but is more of a surgeon type, I would say. So Harrison was again drafted out of high school there, where he was primarily a first baseman and catcher until his junior year. So he is newer to being on the mound, which obviously gives us a little bit more. Gives him a little bit more leeway and understanding for his rawness overall. He'll need time on the mound and experience to kind of refine his tools and get on top of everything there. As far as his arsenal goes, he does have a very strong fastball, touches 98, 99, makes it plus. Not known for much carry. It is the velocity that really is the noticeable aspect of it there. But he does pair that with a 60 grade changeup. Which obviously then plays up because of his ability to shift velocities quite widely there, and wide velocity band, as they call it. And so, you know, that's 2+ pitches already. That's allowed him to strike out 48 in 40 innings at single A last year. He put up a 3.15 ERA, so, you know, he wasn't getting blown up there either. Naturally, though, you know, as is often the case with these types of profiles, the thing that we're looking at is the free passes and how easily he gives those away. Honestly, not bad again for a power pitcher type who's newer to the role. He did give out 18 walks in 40 innings, so that bloated his WHIP all the way up to 1.25. But I mean, again, 1.25 is certainly playable, and he's a raw player right there. So. A little more time on the mound will lead to improvements, but between him, your guy, and one of my favorite name prospects, Gary Gill-Hill, the Rays have quite the trail of young arms that could come up to the majors pretty quickly here.
Yeah, I agree with a lot. I gave Harrison a long look when I was looking at my guys, which is how I set out on my guy. I love again. This is one of those teams. There's like 5 teams who I'll basically trust their pitching until the end of the world, right? It's Tampa, Atlanta, Seattle, Minnesota.
Yeah,
that's kind of the big 4, right? I'd say the Dodgers, but they tend to break everybody, and then they break out at like 27. Right, that's a long time to wait on a 19.
Or they get somebody else broken player and then get them to break out at 27.
Exactly. But yeah, with Harrison, I did like to hit the this big, heavy fastball, like you said. More about the velocity, less about the carry. Right, not a lot of movement on it, which is fine in this day and age. If you're a tunneler, if you work with a team, and Tampa Bay does love that. They love to get you to throw 3 pitches in the same spot of the zone 100 times in a row. Right, the changeup. Beautiful. It's like a 17 mile per hour difference. Like you see the same a pitch look exactly the same to the same spot, and it's almost 20 miles. Like you don't know what to do, man. And it comes out of the hand the same way. You know, a little worried about the walks, but again, like you said, he's young. He's only got a couple of years experience pitching. The fact that he was drafted as a pitcher, I think, says a lot about how well he developed in what was about 2.5 years at high school. High school ball. Yeah, I think that says something. He's coming out, striking out almost 11 per 9.
I saw them do Brendan McKay for that experiment for a while.
Man, right? Brendan McKay was 26, still in the minors struggling, and which is unfortunate. That guy was super
talented. Yeah.
I think with him, you know, it's going to be can he get his control under control, for lack of better words. And what's going to be that third pitch, right? I know Fangraphs lists a slider. But is it going to be a slider? Is it going to be a cutter, a splinker, a splitter, a sweeper? There's so many terms for these new pitches. But what's going to be a third? Because if not, this is again with the Rays, they love to do is to take a pitcher with 2 above average to plus pitches and just turn them into elite relievers, right? They love to do that. So if he can't develop that third pitch, this guy is then, I don't know, strike out 13 per 9 as a 2-inning guy throwing 99 miles an hour.
That wouldn't be a bad consolation prize for sure.
If Houston Street was drafted as a reliever, stayed as a reliever, was a great closer. He was a top 100 prospect. Mason Miller, he was a starter, maybe even a reliever. Ben Joyce was a top 100 guy. So elite relievers, as we know, can get traded for. Aroldis Chapman was traded for Gleyber Torres, right? Elite relievers can get elite returns, so they should get treated that way. So yeah, at the very least, if we don't get a third good pitch out of this guy, but we get these 2, that's an elite big league arm of some sort.
Yeah, the one thing that we should probably note here, though, in the double-edged sword nature of the Rays organization, is that obviously, they like to tinker, they like to toy with around with things, and there's a lot of upside with that. But the way that they use the pitchers can also be, there's a lot of downside in that if you get stuck into a long relief or weird setup role, depending on your formats, what have you. These guys could be elite weapons, and they're just not used the way that you want them as a fantasy manager. So that's the downside of that. Obviously, the upside is somebody like Shane McClanahan. So you can get somebody very talented from that payoff, or you could end up with the potentially elite reliever. There's definitely a lot of different potential outcomes here.
See, I thought you were going to go to the other negative, which is the injuries with Tampa Bay. You could be looking at a 15 to 18 month absence because of a UCL injury or something of that nature. And Tommy John comes knocking on your door.
They certainly have had. I think it's weird. We talked about the Dodgers and their aspect there, and it probably deserves a closer look. But anecdotally, at least, I feel like the Rays, their players are more inherently injury prone. I feel like I'm just going off gut feel here from years of observations, but it feels like the Rays inherently just have naturally injury prone pitchers, whereas the Dodgers push their players to a level where it's just kind of breaking. They're throwing in the lab to a level that maybe humans shouldn't, right? So that's how I feel about it. But I think it's a valid concern still that there is this history of injuries. Look at Alex Cobb or lots of others over the years. Got these eyes, knees, and
Shane Baz. Some of these, at the big league level, they had Eflin, they had Rasmussen, Jeffrey Springs. Hey, look, we're getting because there's a lot of lists here. Yeah, all the talent too, right? It's again, a lot of them not debuting until 27, 28, right? Because of injuries slowing them down. But of course, here we are, just talking about all these prospect pitchers, right? And they always say 10 stat or some such thing as a prospect pitcher. Mm-hmm. It's tough not to fall in love with these guys. And I got another one, Braves pitcher, Cam Caminiti. Absolutely love this guy. Again, trust the system 100%. You're right. These guys kind of fly up through the system. Now, he was a prep guy, so he's not going to fly as quickly as some of the others, right? Like Strider, year 2, he was in the big leagues. AJ Smith-Shawver has gotten 2 chances at the big leagues over his first 3 years of pro ball. I'm sure there's been others, but they love to push their guys. And if you look good early, they're going to move you up fast. But he's just 18. He pitched in the pro leagues, 17 years old last year. Already number 2 prospect in the Brave system, right? So the fact that he's not on my top 100 is probably, upset a few people. But we've got definitely. Yeah. Mid-90s fastball that he can touch 98, 99 miles per hour with. He's got an electric. It's the 1-2. He's got the fastball slider combo, which Braves love. This is what they love their pitchers to have. And he's got a changeup that is starting to lean towards plus, which you give me those 3 pitches together. And he's a big lefty, which that's really tough to find real big, great lefties. Like this guy has number 2 starter written all over him if he fully develops. Very solid control and command. He's got a lot of feel for his pitches, but he still has to grow, right? He's still, again, he's only 18. There's still a lot of work to do. So even though he was an elite arm, he was drafted a little bit, I would say a little later. I don't know. The Braves aren't going to have a top 10 pick anymore, right? So he wasn't a top 10 guy. Still great. But with how good that fastball is, even if that changeup and that slider were just like average pitches, he's still a mid-rotation guy. Like, he's that good. He just has to prove it for probably a year and a half. Let's be honest. By the time he's 19, 20 years old, if he's still doing this, the Braves are going to fast track him through AA and AAA and give him that chance to pitch to the big leagues. And how I see it is, if you profile as a mid-rotation guy, you're probably in the top 100. There's not a lot of mid-rotation and better arms in the minor leagues as we speak. So most of them are going to be inside the top 100, regardless of level. But yeah, I'm just a big Cam fan, and I've talked to some other prospect types, some other analyst guys that are just all in love with him. I might even be the low guy on him for some of the guys I talk to. So, curse on me maybe again. But I have a feeling, I don't know, by the end of April, we get, 8 or 10 of these guys to graduate. He comes out absolutely hot in high A. That Cam Newton's just sit right on that list.
Definitely, yeah. He's very exciting as a prospect there. I admittedly didn't know as much about him heading into this podcast here with you. Obviously we have a little bit of information on him as a prep high schooler, but when they're that far away, it's a lot of projection and a lot of things can go wrong. But where he's at right now, the package is incredible. Like you said, he has 4 pitches that are all at least plus. As you mentioned, that slider and that changeup are particularly excellent as his off speeds. He's another player also too who was previously in the field. He played center field before becoming a pitcher. So obviously, again, here he's a little bit more new to the position and could use some more time with it. But it's easy to dream on this here. Like you said, the organization has the type of pathway that will get him to that success very easily. And even in his quick little debut in the Braves organization there, he had 3 innings, struck out 4, didn't walk any. And I mean, small sample size, obviously, but that's the type of outcome that you're hoping for in those scenarios, getting him that first taste. And if he can ride that momentum, I think certainly, those pitchers as they grow and get a little bit more eyes and scouting on them, we're going to see him fly up this list probably, barring any type of injury concern, really. That's the only thing. I think the package, even if it's somewhat muted actual output, easy scouting, darling, and will definitely be on that list, and we'll be making those Braves fans happy and getting them off your case, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I really wanted to compare him to a Strider or a Schwellenbach. It's just those are college arms. Those were fully developed. We kind of knew who they were. Right, Schwellenbach took kind of a step forward, like a small step forward in the Braves system compared to what he did in college, but was still, much better than we expected. Unluckily for Cam, he's got that very familiar last name, right? Certainly. And the Braves pitching, the people are back on the Braves pitching again, like it's the mid '90s, right? Like it's the Galapagos Addicts trio. So yeah, like I said, this is one of my guys where, like, I don't care if you're in a dynasty league, you guys roster 10 or more prospects, he needs to be picked up yesterday, a week ago when he was drafted last year. If you're in first year player drafts, you could probably get him 3rd round. But the hype's going to be there. He's gaining helium. And if you look at him on Twitter, on Blue Sky, start looking at some of these lists on BA and BP and stuff, it's going to be very difficult to get Cam Newton at a price that's cheap from here forward. I can tell you that much. But why don't you tell me about your 4th name here on your list?
Another pitcher, another one here that we kind of referenced in Mason Miller, and talking about reliever options of sorts. We're talking about Luis Morales of the Athletics here. Total power pitcher type, similar to Harris in that regard. Has that type of skill set that people prospect writers are saying if he doesn't end up in the rotation, he's probably your next elite closer, again, a la Mason Miller. But he did regress a bit this year, which is why he's probably not on your list, and he's fallen off a few other publications as well. But the tools are still there. He was limited by a shoulder impingement to start the year, so that probably contributed to his struggles a little bit. Obviously, getting past that. That said, the injury struggles didn't do any damage to his velocity whatsoever. He is a fireballer through. He sits 96, 98, tops out about 100. So, again, that's easy to see why people are pointing to the bullpen as a potential outcome for him. He also works with a slow curve, but the Athletics this year, as part of his development, were having him work on the slider more instead. It's starting to flash plus, so that was obviously a worthwhile project to work on with him. It gets a ton of break too. It gets more than a foot of break overall, so it'll get a lot of people swinging through on it there, helping his strikeouts. And if he can work on a third pitch here, being his changeup, as we talked about there, getting that type of velocity band between a 100-mile-per-hour fastball and, if you can get 15 some odd miles per hour difference off of that, working at 85 or so, that's going to be really hard for hitters to pick up on and get a bat on. So there's, again, lots of pieces here, but the main downside that prospect analysts point to at this point from their conversations with the Athletics training staff and such is that he's lacking as far as the kind of, we'll call it the veteran experience of the mental aspects of the game. So the thing that they point to mostly is his pitch sequencing. He's kind of just out there throwing the ball at this point, not really kind of coming in there with a set plan on how to, work the advantages that he has as a pitcher against the batters. But, that's obviously something that comes with time. You'd like to think that would just click at some point for him. Tough to say for sure, but if it does, he's gonna be an elite weapon. Again, if it's the bullpen, that's okay. We talked about how that can still find you value on the top, or find you a spot in the top 100 there. So, he's the way I described him here was that he's a pitcher who's been bigger, badder, and better than every hitter he's faced growing up. And he'll just need to show some growth in Double-A this year, which is the presumed assignment for the start of 2025.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. This is, again, he was even on my radar back in 2023. Morales was, and he was the big strikeouts, right? He was striking out a ton of guys. As always, the big concern is the control, right? Once the walks per nine reaches 3 and higher, you start to get a little worried, especially at the much lower levels, right? Guys are more free swinging. That tells me that you're not getting a lot of pitches in the zone, which is what we want. He did have a little bit of problem with the home runs last year in high A, which he did the year before in only 7 2/3 innings as well. But this is also, we're talking 88 innings at high A, and he's had 92 strikeouts, 51 walks, right? That's the problem right there. 51 walks is crazy, but the stuff is so. That fastball is plus basically. Curveball's plus. The slider looks like it's coming in as plus, like you said. The changeup's above average, right? You've a 4-pitch repertoire like that. It all comes down to command. And if the command doesn't develop, again, you could be an elite reliever with kind of bad command. You really can. If you just say, screw it, I'm throwing 70% strikes, I'm throwing everything at the strike zone I can, and it's going to be a 100-mile-per-hour fastball. It's going to be a 90-mile-per-hour slider, because all these fireballers now have realized that if you can throw a ball that'll cut from left to right at 90 miles an hour, it's really hard to catch up to that, right? And then your changeup is 82. All of a sudden, you expect 100, and you get a pitch that just drops at your knees at 82 miles an hour. Yeah, it's there. And, even though the Athletics will be in the minor league stadium in Sacramento for 3 years, I think it was. I know 2 years at least.
2 to 3,
Right. Say he makes it up to the big leagues and they're still in Sacramento. That park plays up almost the same way the Coliseum did, right? The only thing is it's got a smaller foul ball area, right, which helps the batters a little bit. And then how the temperature is going to play, right? It's supposed to be much hotter in Sacramento. We don't know how that's going to affect how the ball flies, how pitchers perform, will they get tired faster, whatever. But I agree. He probably should be in Double-A to kick off the year. The Athletics are more aggressive with their pitchers than I think a lot of people realize. But he also could spend the entire season there working on his command, right? I don't see a jump to AAA unless he somehow comes out and is walking 2 batters per 9 for 90 innings. Like, he's going to need a long run of limited walks, limited home runs before he'll be trusted to move up, I think.
For sure, yeah. I envision him spending the entire year at AA, most likely, barring some type of real improvement there. But like you said, as far as guys who walk a lot in the as relievers, elite relievers, you've seen this firsthand with Josh Hader. You know, he's walking 5 for 9. He's still elite, so there's a pathway there.
Yep. Okay, let's go to my fourth guy as Griffin Burkholder, Philadelphia outfielder, 2nd-round pick last year. He's a guy that I've noticed he's getting a lot of helium from people. And that's mainly because this is a guy who was a first rounder. If it wasn't for the fact that he's had recurring hamstring injuries, including this most recent season, right? It kind of held him back a little bit, but he's got plus speed, above average power, average hit tool. The key thing is he makes really smart swing decisions, right? Doesn't chase a ton, doesn't have a high whiff rate. And the odds are is that with his defense alone, he kind of has a set floor of being an average big league outfielder. So if the hit tool can develop a little bit and he can get to that power with that speed, that's a fantasy starter, especially in these five outfielder leagues, right? Where you need 75 outfielders in 15-team leagues. But obviously the things that could hold him back are the hamstring injuries going to continue to be persistent throughout his career? And if so, like, we'll figure this out. What's going on here, right? Is there an imbalance or something? And then it's just a hit tool, right? If the hit tool doesn't develop, he's not making enough contact, nothing else is going to matter, right? If you don't, unless you're hitting 40 homers a year, you can't be a speedster and bat 220, 230. That's just, you can't steal enough bases to justify 230. But the Phillies absolutely love the guy. They love him so much that they paid him as much as their first round pick for the bonus. Their bonuses were exactly the same. They want to keep him from going to West Virginia. This is a guy who I think could be a fast mover as well, just because the Phillies outfield is old. It's not that great anymore. I think the youngest guy is Brandon Marsh, 30, something like that. And Philly wants to continue to be competitive. But I do think he has the potential to move up quick this year just by being healthy, and just if he can bat like 265, all the rest of the tools are gonna complement that perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, that speed is obviously the key thing here, but if he seems like a good bet as any for a speedster type to actually be able to hit a little bit here. I was surprised when I started to dig into him. You know, naturally when you see a 70 grade on a speed on a guy's speed, you'd start to think, okay, well, this is probably like a 45 hitter or maybe a 40 grade hitter. You know, they're really leaning on that in their defense to get to the big leagues, but Burkholder has, you know, a much higher floor when it comes to that. You know, he does seem like somebody who is going to be able to hit at least league average levels and league average power. So he's not just a wet noodle out there compared to some people. I've been burned in the past by buying in on the Billy Hamilton types, and you know, I've seen over the years that's not usually the best investment long term, just because if that speed slows down for any reason, injury, age, what have you, there's next to nothing to rely on. Which does give me a little pause with the hamstring injuries, like you mentioned there. Obviously, that's probably what dinged what dinged his draft stock in a significant way. But soft tissue injuries in particular are such a nagging thing and are so much more hard to kind of suss out as to what's going on and what you can do about them. You might be right that it's a simple imbalance or something like that. So it could be easily fixed, but it just as easily could not be. So worth watching on that. If he goes through a healthy 2025 season without showing anything there, then I think you could probably put that behind him, but we'd have to see that first. So, but that said, yeah, he's got the as good a chance as any. He's got a good frame. He's 6'2", 195, and he's only 18 years old. So definitely somebody to dream on for the next wave of outfielders in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's the injuries, right? That's the thing. His hamstrings basically determine where he's going to go in his professional career, right?
Totally.
If it was, if it means a little less running, right, instead of like the 35.
Yes, you give me 60 grade. You'd be okay.
Yeah, let's go 15-25. You don't have to go 15-40, right? Let's just get on base. Let's head for a decent average and play that defense that we already know you're going to be able to play, and get out there in the field. But yeah, I'm kind of excited. I think you could see high. He'll start in a low A. There's no doubt in my mind. The Phillies are a little bit aggressive with their young bats. But if he could finish the year in high A, then we'll be looking good. And if we don't, it's because he's not making the contact or he's not staying healthy. We have one more player on our list, and let's start with yours.
Yeah, my final one. We're definitely leveraged into the Rays this year because my player is Braylor Guerrero, outfielder. He is definitely somebody that I've been keeping an eye on since about I'd say spring training area. Last season, there were some reports that he was looking big and physical at that time there, and he certainly he's a monster for a young guy there. He's been described as being built like an NFL linebacker. And I think it was Eric Longenhagen of Fangraphs that said if he showed up on the football field, he thinks he would actually end up with the defensive end. So you're looking at a big, strong man. That's basically what we're saying there. He's 6'1", 215 pounds. But of course, the thing that the reason that you don't know his name, most likely he's not a household name at this point, is the shoulder injuries. So he's been limited to only 126 at bats across 2 seasons, 2023 and 24, due to a torn labrum. And that obviously is something very concerning. We've seen how shoulder surgeries can have long-term impact on your ability to get to power. Your exit velocities take a good dip after that. But even with all that said, the ZBs are ranking top 10 in the race system. And again, he just turned 18 in the middle of last year. So this is a young power hitter outfielder who just needs a little bit more time. He also is fairly speedy. He turns in plus run times, but at this point, we're thinking because of he's built like an NFL linebacker defensive end, he's gonna fill out a little bit there and slow down as he ages a little bit. So that's understandable. He's not gonna be a big stolen base guy, but he might chip in 5 to 10 here and there. So that'll help. Otherwise, things of note for him, he weirdly really struggles against lefties. Although it is a small sample size, he's currently hitless in his career against left-handed pitchers. But I think it comes in something like 26 at bats. So small sample size alert should be at the forefront of your mind right there. But that said, he could maybe end up as a platoon guy if he can't get that under control in the end. That would limit his opportunities, and we know that the Rays certainly like to platoon their players. So maybe he's not one of those guys that gets 500 at bats every season to begin with here, unless he's really showing off. But I would like to see, speaking of a full season of at bats, that's really what he needs for 2025. The tools and the skills there, they point to any other type of high ceiling lottery tickets type, and all we really need to see is the production. So if the production comes, he's able to retain those exit velocities, maybe even bounce back a little bit now that he's further out from that torn labrum. It's certainly possible that he's maybe a top 60 player on the top 100 list going forward here. But that said, that torn labrum does give me a lot of pause. We've seen that these kinds of things tend to lead to recurrences. Obviously, we saw Tatis Jr., his subluxations continue on for quite some time and ended up causing him long-term damage to it. And, it can take out even the best players. That's really what I'm saying there. So keep an eye on it. He's exciting. He's built. He's got the stick, but he's really just got to put some at-bats together to get our attention fully.
So, yes, that's something with him that even, we talked about. I told you he was on my short list. But for me, it's just, we need to see a fully healthy season. Show us the shoulder injuries are behind you. But it's loud. The tools are so loud. Like you said, he just turned 18. He's already hit multiple balls north of 110 miles per hour, which is insane to do at 16 and 17 years old. Even at 18, And something it might boost your confidence a little bit on this. I don't know if you saw this. MLB.com is predicting him to be the number one prospect for the Rays in 2027, which I know is 2 years from now, but also we're talking about an 18-year-old kid. Few 18-year-olds end up number one for their team, so this isn't crazy, but they believe in the tools. Like I said, it's the power, loud, a little bit of speed. He's more of a corner infield guy. Honestly, probably ends up at first base eventually. If he puts on like 10 to 15 more pounds, that's a first baseman. He's 6'1". He kind of is at the weight you want him to be at to maintain the power. A big left-handed swing. He's a guy that has 40 homer power, which you don't see a lot of out of guys his age. But the Rays are very good at finding these guys in the Dominican Republic, in Latin America, right? Junior Caminero as a prospect. Look at him now. They love to find guys down there that have a lot of projection, that might have some questions. But I think that this season, we get 450, 500 plate appearances out of Brayler. We're probably looking at low A at that point, right? Probably where he should. I don't know. He might start the complex league again. A fun little anecdote about that. When he was it June 20th, I think, was his last day or something like that for the complex league. He led the team in almost every single offensive statistic. Okay, it was like 155 WRC plus. The strikeout rate super high, but he also had a 17.5% WAR. Right, everyone's free swinging in the DSL, the complex levels. His pitches are going all over the place. Half the pitches are outside the zone, anyways.
You got to grain of salt a bit, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, like you said, big boy. He's only going to get bigger. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does this year. I'm hoping he gets into low A and can see a little bit better pitching, so we can see where the strikeout rate's going to be, where the walk rate's going to be, and again, like you said, can he make contact against left-handed pitchers?
Yeah,
it does all that.
Yeah, it's rare. The question here is not strikeouts, right? For the outfielder profile, you're usually looking at he's swinging and missing a lot, but that's not the case here. He's actually done quite well with his contacts overall, but he's got to actually swing the bat a few more times to see it.
Yeah, it's that if he makes the contact we think he can over 500, 550 plate appearances. I mean, it's the moon. Right to the moon. This is the kind of investment you dream of. It's the kind of investment I'm gonna brag about myself a little bit here. I got out of Ellie de la Cruz when I picked him up like a year before he was even on the radar of top 100 lists.
I remember having trade talks with you.
That is what you want. You want to get these guys before, and he's already popped up on some lists towards the back end, just because the ceiling is there, the hype is there, but the production isn't. So he's still cheap.
I'll go one further even. Yeah, like you said with EDLC, I think he's not the type of guy that you're valuing as such right now because of the injuries, but this is the type of profile that very easily could be the number one prospect in the entire league. So.
In fact, I'm looking, if I look at the list of the 10 players we've mentioned, highest ceiling, highest potential.
I think
only one I think we've talked about that could be better than like the top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Which now that we've poo-pooed all these other guys we just talked about, let's talk about my final guy, the Tampa Bay guy. You mentioned a little bit earlier without saying his name. We had Santiago Suarez, Tampa Bay starter. And this guy, kind of a long shot in my opinion, but it's just because as prospect guys, everyone loves the big strikeout numbers, right? We want to see guys in low baseball striking out like 11 batters per 9 innings. But as Jeff alluded to, Suarez doesn't do that. Instead, he is elite command and control. We're talking 2 walks per 9 or less at every level. And he did strike out more than 9 per 9 innings last year, which is really good. We've got 4 solid pitches. We have a plus fastball, a plus cutter that he really worked into last year. Average curveball and an average or better. It's a splitter. It's a changeup. They don't really know what it is yet, but it's a work in progress. And it's looking like there's going to be something there. But what also drew me to him was he throws a lot of innings. He's he's like a right-handed CC Sabathia, right? He threw 116 and 2/3 innings last year, which was the most by far in a teenage picture. And is a ton for guys in the minor leagues, kind of period, right? We see him top out like 130. And the team's like, all right, your year is done. So 116, wonderful. And the reason he's able to do that, he's extremely efficient. 69% of his pitches are strikes. He threw 5 or more innings in 17 of his 23 starts. And here's the thing. The fastball, like I said, it's plus, gets into the mid-90s. He can crank it up to 98 miles per hour. He just doesn't get a lot of swing and miss with it because it doesn't have a lot of movement, right? It's a very straight fastball. But also, he's throwing everything in the strike zone. So you're having to swing a lot, right? He attacks hitters, which is something I love. And again, one of the top 4 teams that we love for their pitching development with the Rays. So elite control, durability, can pitch deep into games, and he's showing this like more and more velocity. God forbid he starts sitting 96, 97 this year. He's touching 100. Give me up to 10 and a half strikeouts per 9 innings. This dude is flying up the list here. That's a top 50 arm, right? You're walking less than 2, striking out 10 and a half, and you're 19. That's like some of these guys go crazy putting their top 20 right away. I know how it is. I talk to these guys. He's someone that I think by the end of this year is probably like a top 70 guy. Just based off of what he did last year, if he replicates that at the next step, at high A into double A, I mean, we're going to be talking about this guy just every single. The arguments on who gets to roster him on our dynasty league are going to be. It's going to be a fight.
I think that's a very fair point because you and I definitely love our command and control types because we do play in a strikeout KBB league, I guess, and so our strikeout to walk rates are quite important to us. And this is such a fun profile. It's so different from the other players that we've talked about here, who are often like you said, the fireballers with a big power pitch. This is not that guy. He profiles to be kind of like a Walmart George Kirby in some ways, right? Like that elite walk rate that he just doesn't give up anything free, doesn't make it easy for you. I almost don't want him to develop that extra heat in a way because I think that oftentimes pitchers then try and lean into that too much and they lose that control aspect of it. So I mean, sure, an extra mile per hour or 2 would probably help, but I think that might somehow undo what makes him so special because his ability to work deep in the games, like you said, is very rare at this point. He could be, you think of an innings accumulator type as, that's a derogatory term almost, right? But that's in this era where you're getting only 5 innings per outing from a starting pitcher. Those extra couple innings here and there, you look at like a Logan Webb, for example, right? Like his strikeout totals are inflated a little bit just because he pitches so deep into games every time. He's not the most talented pitcher overall as far as his arsenal goes, but I could see Suarez going to be that route either if he doesn't go the Kirby route too. So he's definitely a rare breed, odd for the Rays, general archetype, I guess, but they're clearly doing well with him so far. And I think that as we talked about with their kind of the likelihood that injury occurs with the hurlers in the Rays system there, this might just be the type of player he's immune to that kind of thing, right? He's clearly been able to pitch deep into the games and has built up that endurance. So that's promising on its own. The only kind of, minor warning flags that I saw in his profile there was that he did suddenly develop some issues with home runs last year. He was at he was 0.97 per 9 innings, so almost 1 per 9 innings last year. And that did come with an elevated home run per fly ball rate. So maybe it was a bit of bad fortune in that regard because it went from 2% the year before to 11% last year, which is a pretty significant swing. So, if it stays more in line with the 2 to maybe 5% kind of thing, brings his ERA down a little bit more, I think that there's a good chance that this is an exciting player rising up the ranks. I think 70 to 80 range is certainly doable for him. And in the KBB leagues that we talked about, or those leagues where you do maybe quality starts instead of wins, you got to go deep enough. That's where you want.
Yeah, that was saying with the home runs. I think that's just because he did throw so many strikes, right? I think that's the
part of it
key.
too.
I don't know too many big league starters that are throwing more than like 55% strikes, right? You can't do that against big leaguers. If you're throwing strikes 70% of the time, you're going to probably get smacked around unless you just have elite pitches. But I'm also encouraged.
Snell.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm also encouraged by that because that means he will at least continue to attack hitters until it becomes a problem. And then hopefully that's where the Rays step in and go, hey, we love the fact that you want to attack these guys. But if you're putting everything in the zone, they're going to know that they wait on the one pitch they want. You're going to give it to them.
Yeah,
So that's where I'm going to trust their development. Yeah, that's where it's like you said, they're used to big, heavy, fast fastballs, right? The Glasnows, the Snells, the McClanahans, the Shane Baz, the old school, the Chris Archer back in the day, right? The David Price. They like these guys that throw 97, 98, 99 miles per hour who may not have the best control, but when you can blow it past guys and get them to swing stuff out of the zone, it doesn't matter. So this is a little bit different. This is a little different profile where the guy already has the command and he's growing into the power. And I think I'm with you. I've never really considered that where they add an extra tick or two to the fastball. All of a sudden, they're being a little too reliant on the speed, which then that's where you make mistakes, right? Where you get a little too comfortable with that. Oh, second
5 for wildness.
Yes. But that's it. That's all we got, man. That's your 5. That's my 5. I had a great time. I'm glad you could join us today, Jeff. Is there anything you want to talk about that you've got coming up here on the site in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I'll hit the plugs for SportsEthos here. Obviously, lots of quality content being churned out here for our draft guide stuff. You've seen lots of that on the site already, and there's obviously more to come as we get closer to opening day. My focus throughout the year, I'll be doing the pickup article once per week. Usually Fridays was what I was doing last year. We'll see if that's the same again this year. Otherwise, though, we're going to try and turn our attention to the dynasty space as much as we can, you and I. Lots of different articles to come there. I'd say the one to keep closest to watch for will be my bi-weekly check-in on kind of the hottest prospects in the minor leagues at the time. We'll see who's performing well and what we think that has changed their outlook in the future on their prospect rankings, and kind of just explore that throughout the year. So that, and we'll probably have some discussions about dynasty rankings along the way too, and lots of good stuff to look forward to.
You do you have anything you're adding? Anything coming up in the draft guide anytime soon? You got a couple weeks.
What do we have coming there? Yeah, I mean, we've got we'll have lots of dynasty content coming your way on that for sure. We've got all sorts of stuff planned.
That is fantastic, and hopefully we'll have you back on the pod more often, right? As I was
Looking forward
speaking to you, we've been speaking to some of the other guys. We want to start having some of the other content creators, producers out here hop on the pod and getting to talk about it, and getting your views out there into the world, seeing who agrees with you, disagrees with you, want to argue with you on Twitter or Blue Sky, they can. Speaking of, you want to plug your Twitter before we get out of here?
Yeah, you can check me out. You've got the name right on the screen there for those watching on video. Ethos Jeff is my handle. You can find me there, and obviously on podcasts going forward, hopefully as well.
That's yes, exactly. If we can, not every week, maybe every other week, right? I want to try to get some other folks on and schedule conflicts and whatnot. But again, Jeff, thanks for joining us today, man. I had a great time. It's always fun having you guys on here. I want to thank the listeners for joining us for another wonderful Fantasy MLB Today. As you know, you can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, on our website at sportsethos.com, anywhere else you get your podcasts. Make sure you like and share, follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell everyone who will listen. Remember, we are a top 5 finalists for the Fantasy Sports Writers Association's Fantasy Baseball Podcast of the Year. So we'll let you know what happens there. We got nothing else. Have a good night. Just remember, this has been a Sports Ethos presentation.